to the closing rally of Marxism Festival 2022. It's been an absolutely fantastic weekend of debates, discussions, culture, music, art and ideas to change the world. And it's so fantastic that we've been able to come together and have our festival. My name's Lorna. I'm a member of the Socialist Workers' Party in Glasgow, and I'm going to be chairing the closing rally. We're going to finish this festival just how we started, with a bang, and we have an absolutely fantastic panel of speakers for the rally this evening. I've got 5 on it. I've got 4 who I'm going to introduce in turn. And our first speaker is going to be Gyekye Tanoh from our sister organisation in Ghana. We're thrilled to have him open the closing rally. So, round of applause for Gyekye Tanoh.
All right, comrades, great to be here. God, I didn't realize I was this short. Hitler complex, Napoleon. Comrades, the world is burning. It's burning not simply because of the cost of living crisis, which you are experiencing here, and which is ravaging the global south with great intensity. We see what is happening in Sri Lanka, for example, where people have to queue days and nights, buy half a cup of kerosene or a cup of rice for what was once their monthly wage, and so on. We see also the effects of climate change in the here and now. Yes, it is true that the projections are dire. The IPCC has said, as many comrades have repeated here in this conference, that within 8 years, 250 million people in Africa, 50% of the entire cities in Africa will be without water resources. This will trigger a global movement, a dislocation of 700 million people in Africa. We know what that means. Migration, racism, conflict, war. Who do we turn to resolve these existential questions? Who do we turn to with the kind of urgency that is required to marshal the resources that working people create and the wealth that working people create all the world to begin to address these questions? Do we turn to our governments? Well, who are they? Boris Johnson? I don't think so. Because our governments are busily ensuring that in this moment of crisis, in this moment of uncertainty, they double down on their power, they double down on their competitive capabilities to grab more and more of the resources and to oppress and terrorize people, bomb people to smithereens all over the world. So we see, for example, what is happening in Ukraine. I don't need to go into that. But what we have to understand is the global dimension to this issue. It's not simply about the cost of living crisis in terms of food, in terms of the fertilizer prices, in terms of cooking oil, and a whole range of other necessities. It is also the fact that NATO, as we know, as the European wing of the US military-led imperial agenda, is spreading throughout the world. It has refurbished its forces in Africa. It has appointed a new commander, a black guy, man like myself, okay, taller, no pot belly, all that, yeah, cool, you know. But nonetheless, these are people who will act just like British regiments in Kenya acted. When they denigrated the local population, called them all kinds of names, exploited local women, killed some of them, and then we know those people are the same exact regiment that put up the picture, the image of Jeremy Corbyn when he was leader of the Labour Party to throw darts at him. In other words, the ruling class are perfectly aware that to extend their military power, they require alliances. They require, even though they're competing, they require alliances with elements of the global south. They require the image of shutting down any alternative to the system, whatever Corbyn represented, and we have to turn to elsewhere. We can't look to those who control, who sit at the apex of power in terms of the G7 governments, for example. So who do we turn to? The transnational companies? Absolutely not. These are the people causing the fossil fuel crisis. These are the people continuing to invest $100 million an hour, every day, as we speak, into fossil fuel production and so on. These are the people at the heart of the tragedy that is befalling people in the global south. So you take a country like Mozambique, where we have seen from 2017 onwards a wave of droughts, of cyclones, of flooding, and so on, which is displacing all kinds of people. In the second city of Mozambique, 300,000 people, 300,000 homes were destroyed. A 100 square kilometer area around the second city of Beria was also destroyed in terms of agricultural livelihoods. Livestock was drowned, crops, farms flooded, and so on and so forth. And these are people now dependent on food aid. These are people now dependent on handouts. These are the people vulnerable to militias, to foreign aid workers, to all kinds of claims and promises and exploitation by transnational companies who are there looking for rare minerals, for titanium, and so on to power the electrification of transport in the interest of the corporate world. So we can't look to them either. So do we look to the government of Mozambique or the government of anywhere else in the global south? Absolutely not. Because if we did, then we'll have to question why it is that is so attractive a proposition for the government of Rwanda to take the people who are being dumped, chewed, spat out by the global system, being dumped as refugees in Rwanda. Because Rwanda itself aspires to be a sub-regional power in the Great Lakes region, a region of great natural resources. Rwandan military has been in the Democratic Republic of Congo with the military of other countries, including that of Kenya, where the British troops were stationed, supporting the government of Kenya at the time, causing havoc in terms of the local working people and so on, fomenting ethnic divisions and so on. So, comrades, we really need to rise up. We really need to rise up because of the urgency of what we're confronted with. And the possibility of rising up is there precisely because we see it happening everywhere. In smaller countries like Eswatini, in Colombia, as we see recently, and so on, people are beginning to rise up. One thing, though, one ingredient, though, comrade, has to be multiplied, has to be able to be, to spread to ensure that this happens. This is that those who are oriented on the power of the central power of the organized working class, who is at the heart of production, producing all the goods and services in whichever part of the world, those who are oriented on that have to make their presence felt more. And that doesn't happen automatically. In the same way as anti-racism doesn't happen automatically, or fighting against abortion doesn't happen automatically, neither does organizing the power of workers to transform it from confronting the cost of living crisis all the way to seize the multinational companies. That doesn't happen automatically either. The possibility of that happening emerges for people when there's evidence of those traditions delivering advances for working people, democratizing working movements, arming them with agendas, ideas, methods of organization. And the crucible of revolutionary parties is central to that. This is an event organized by our British sister organization, Socialist Workers' Party. One of the tests that the Socialist Workers' Party and many left revolutionary organizations stand up to right now is against the test of imperialism, against the test of racism, against the test of climate change, and so on and so forth. Which means that we need that crucible, which on a daily basis will ensure that activists from different organizations are together, working people from different cultures are together, and so on and so forth. The Revolutionary Party is an absolute necessity more than ever. And that is why, comrades, the lesson that I take from here, and all of you must take from here, is that we need to build revolutionary parties, and whoever else is sitting next to us, behind us, lives next to us, get them tonight, join the Socialist Workers' Party. Let's move from there.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Gyekye. We're going to move on to our second speaker on the panel, Christina Bukoltz from Marx 21 in Germany. She's a former member of the German Parliament with Die Linke, and she's recently been elected to the executive board of Die Linke. So thanks so much, Christina, for joining us.
Yeah, comrades, philosophers have interpreted the world in different ways. It's important that we change it. Marxism is the key to practice and is so necessary. If you see the horror of capitalism, you see the horror of capitalism in the wars in Ukraine, in Yemen, and many other places of the world. And you see the horror of the economical war they are driving towards the poor countries of the world. The ruling classes are wasting human resources to pump billions into the arms economy. Our government just decided on 100 billion extra euros to arms spendings, to buy killer drones, to buy airplanes that are designed to carry nuclear bombs of the United States Army, and they want to buy hypersonic weapons. Germany is a rich country, but 14 million people are living in poverty. In some regions, every second child is living in poverty. I think our governments should invest in them and in the children of the world. And if you see the crisis and the inflation and the rise of cost of living, the far right is trying to offer an answer to crisis and poverty. Their answer is an answer of despair, of racism and hatred. Our answer is one of hope. And I was impressed today to listen to the RMT workers and their strikes. Victory to the RMT, solidarity from Germany. In Germany, we are having a strike of the hospital workers in North Rhine-Westphalia, nurses and hospital workers fighting for better wages, fighting for more staff in the hospitals. And last year, we had a successful fight in Berlin that was won by the workers, and they got more staff in the hospitals. And I think it's so necessary to support them, and it's also victory to the hospital workers in Germany. We have the highest inflation in Germany since 50 years. In this autumn, we will have big disputes on tariffs. Our government, the government that is spending 1 billion euros on arms, wants an tax-free one-off payment instead of a proper wage rise for the workers. So there will be big fights in the trade unions, and we have to support them to get an offensive rise of wages. I think we see very clearly that the attacks of the working class and militarization go hand in hand. Olaf Scholz, our Chancellor, announced a new epoch, a Zeitenwende, and the chair of the SPD, the Social Democratic Party, demands Germany should have the claim of being a leading power in the world. And he demands the acceptance of military force as a political means. We are standing firmly against it. And even though it's difficult at the moment to mobilize on the streets, we did this. Yesterday, 4,000 people demonstrated in Berlin against the armament and the war. And they demanded a civil new epoch, in civil Zeitenwende, and they demanded to put the needs of working class in Germany and worldwide in the center of our fights. And we are going on to mobilize. Today we had a conference of the anti-war movement in Germany, and we are planning to have a national demonstration in October. I think it's very important to build these movements step by step. It's our task to give people the confidence and the political ideas to fight and to win. Our rulers are organized internationally, in NATO, in financial institutions, in pro-capitalist parties. We fight in the spirit of international solidarity from below. Karl Liebknecht said, "Down with the warmongers on this side and on the other side of the borders. Let's fight together in international solidarity." Victory to the RMT workers, victory to the hospital workers, and victory to all of the fights going to take place in the next month and years. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Janet Alder, the sister of Christopher Alder. A very warm welcome for Janet.
Right. I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to give you a quick, brief outline of what's happened, because there is a lot of new faces here that I have never seen before. 25 years now I've been fighting for justice for my brother Christopher, an ex-paratrooper. He'd gone to a nightclub, been punched. He got taken to the hospital as a complainant. Police went to see him as a complainant, dragged him about the hospital, dragged him outside. An ambulance, they phoned the police van, stepped into the police van, fully compass mentis, came out the other side, fully unconscious, with his trousers and box shorts down to his knees, and he was thrown on the custody suite floor. He was there gasping for his life for 11 minutes. Christopher was left to die. I was very naive to, how the state works. I honestly believed that after seeing that horrific video myself, that the state would have done the right thing. But then I'd met so many other families in the same position that had never, ever got justice in this country. And the truth is, the state protects the police protects the state. Now, I'm not going to hold back. I don't hold back my punches at all, because us as ordinary people, at the present moment in time with the political climate, we've only got each other. You've got what I believe is a one-party system, and we have got to stop looking at these people for some kind of guidance, and we've got to stand together and unite together. Yeah, and we've got to, I believe we've got to hit them streets. No matter what they tell us we shouldn't do, yeah, when it comes to the situation that we're in now, all we can do is fight back. I went through every single part of this system, every single institution. Every institution that most of you have got faith in, I have been through. And my family has been badly, badly, badly let down. Yeah? They've gone to a state of deprivation, to the point of we thought we buried my brother in 2000. And somebody within the mortuary has swapped his body for a 77-year-old woman, hid him in 6 body bags for 11 years, and all them 11 years they were using his body to train trainee police officers week in, week out for 11 years, and trying to pretend it was the woman from Nigeria. They stopped that family coming to see their loved one because they knew it was my brother they had in that mortuary all those years. So that's the hospital, yeah? So, you know what I mean? As I say, when I tell you that I've been through every single part of the system, I'm not joking. Yeah? We have to question every single part of the system. I know a lot of people have got faith in, the hospitals and this, that, and the other. The workers, yeah. The ordinary workers, yeah. But the way the state works, the way the system is built, it is letting a lot of people down, and a lot of things are being covered up in this country. And we've got to start admitting this. Yeah, because to make real change, you have first got to admit what is wrong. You can't just say that we have change and really not know, because that's how the system works. Yeah? The system works in a way where they'll apologize. Oh, we're really sorry for this. We're really sorry for that. And he'll say to them, what are you sorry for? And they say, well, we don't accept any liability for anything. But real change comes with truth. Truth sometimes is really, really painful, yeah? That's one thing that I made sure over these years, that I found out exactly what had gone on. Because I thought, I'm not going to be able to change it just through feeling this pain all the time. I have to read. I have to learn how the system works. And the system protects itself, not us as ordinary people. As I said, I was inspired by the RMT when they come out, because they're militant, yeah? They're straightforward. They're honest. They've come away, and just what we need, a breath of fresh air as people. We've got to point to where the blame lies. And the blame lies with a racist government, a police force that protects them, and lots of people that are quite willingly to go along with things. That's what I have found so painful in this. People have so willingly just gone along with it, despite the fact their own children in the future could be affected. Do you know what I mean? We need to teach our children to have the courage to stand up in these situations. That's not taught to them at school. It's not taught, peer pressure's not taught to them. Because that's what I've found has happened over the years. All the people that's been involved, and there's been absolutely thousands of people, millions and millions of pounds into covering up what's happened to my brother and many, many other people that's dying at the hands of the state, whether it be in psychiatric hospitals. I've just lost 2 brothers in 2 years in psychiatric hospitals. Our question, are they just clearing out the closets? Times are hard. You know what it's like with the fuel. They've got no money, do you know what I mean, for people's wages. Do you know what I mean, the jobs. And I don't think we've got a system that cares for us. So we need to unite and fight together. And ask some of the hard questions that you really, the areas where you don't want to go in. Yeah. And I'm only saying this because I really feel that things are not how we expect them to be at the moment. And I think things are going to get harder. And who do they blame? Yeah, they've got to find somebody to blame. It's either migrants, black people, it's either, Muslim people, you know what I mean? We've seen it all. It's countries, it's everything else than actually touching where the power lies. And the power lies in that 10 Downing Street. The power lies in Parliament. The power lies with the people that we have put in power to look over us and look after things. We have only got each other. So I think you should unite together with everybody, yeah? And, the RMT, everybody should come out. It'd be absolutely fantastic. They've put so many different barriers up against us, trying to take away the Human Rights Act. Because the Human Rights Act is something for everybody, yeah? And they're trying to hamper every which way possible to challenge them. And that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. We have to be really careful because it's spreading all over Europe. Look at those 200 African people, yeah? I was absolutely disgusted when I saw that. But what has the government done as far as calling it out? Nobody seems to have called it out. It's like it's normal. We've got to admit, do you know what I mean? We've been there, so they are here. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce our last speaker now, Amy Leather, who's the Joint National Secretary of the Socialist Workers' Party.
Let's check. All right. Well, look, before I start, I have got a few things to say. Some thank yous. Because it really has been a brilliant weekend, and I hope everyone has enjoyed it. But it couldn't have happened without the comrades who volunteered to help run the event, run the registration desk, set up the rooms, check the tickets, move the microphones around, lots of other things. So I want to say a massive thank you to all those in the pink T-shirts, the team. Fantastic. And there's a lot of people who play a role making Marxism Festival happen. But I do want to say a special thanks to the tech team and those running the culture tent, because there was a lot of logistics to get over to make those things happen. And finally, we couldn't hold Marxism Festival without a proper professional creche. So I do want to say thank you to Monica Axon, who makes sure that is run and works to make sure it runs. Thank you, Monica. Okay, well, class struggle is back. The thread of renewed working class resistance has really run through Marxism Festival. The rail strikes, as people have said already, they felt transformative. They showed us how we can fight and how we can potentially win. And they reveal a lot about society. Who does the work? Just like the pandemic shone a light on who the essential workers are, so too did the rail strikes. 40,000 workers brought the rail network to a standstill. Managers, chief executives, they can't make the trains run. And they show as well, that is why the Tories, the rail companies and the media are screaming so hard against them. And they force people to pick a side. The rail strikes were a chance to hit back at Boris Johnson and the Tories and the bosses. But in that fight, Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, he made clear his hostility to the strikes. But they show us the basis for our working class unity. Because the element of renewed workers' struggle comes at a time after some magnificent street movements that have burst out in the last few weeks, challenging racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. Think of the Black Lives Matter protests, the Me Too movement, the climate strikes, the continued mobilisations in solidarity with Palestine. And now the power of workers adds to the resistance. That special power that actually shows our power when we stop profits being made. And the strikes show all the working class in all its diversity. Who were the first rail workers actually to go out on strike? The outsourced Churchill cleaners. We heard from Bella on Friday night. This is a workforce made up of black workers, women workers, migrant workers. Not actually a drain on the working class, but central to the working class. And I think more strikes can help undermine the divisions that are stoked up. But you know, it's not just now the rail workers taking action. Other groups of workers are talking about strikes. Whether it's the London Tube workers, baggage handlers at Heathrow, postal workers, even barristers. Not to mention important local disputes like that of the Coventry bin workers. So we have to go from here and get behind every group of workers who take action. Fight for strike votes in our own unions and build wider solidarity so that no group of workers is left on their own to fight. Because, you know, some of us, we've been waiting a long time to see such action by organised workers, and it could be happening. Those rail strikes give us a glimpse of workers' power, but the truth is we're going to need a lot more. We're going to need to argue for more action, but also how strikes can be carried forward to victory. Because to be honest, it's a shame the RMT hasn't yet called more strike dates. You know, it risks losing momentum. We cannot afford to have another opportunity to hit back at the Tories, squandered like it was at P&O, where 800 workers actually were sacked on the spot, and the potential to fight was not turned into reality by the union leaders. Rather than lead occupations and mass mobilisations, they relied on legal action and the government. Not a surprise, that strategy ended in failure. And we have to ask, what does success look like? Because at a time of soaring prices, inflation running at nearly 12% and rising, then any pay increase that's less than that is a pay cut. And we're told it's not realistic to ask for more. Yeah, it's not realistic to survive and live on the low wages, pensions and benefits in Britain right now. And let's be very clear, it is not workers' wages that cause inflation. It's the profiteering at the top of society. The bosses who want to boost and protect their profits and make us pay for it by raising prices. And you know, millions now of working class people are being hammered by the relentless cost of living crisis. It's a social emergency. Worrying, are we going to be able to pay our next gas bill? Can we put enough food on the table? Can you even fill your car to get to work? Meanwhile, you've got a Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, worth £730 million, telling us we've got to make more sacrifices, and a Tory Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who not only lies again and again, latest lie about how many hospitals he's meant to have built, not built, but actually partying while our friends and families died in their thousands during the pandemic. There they were, living it up, vomiting on the floor, throwing wine at the walls, while ordinary people like us couldn't even visit our dying loved ones. Their contempt and arrogance knows no bounds. Now we have a moment of opportunity, but they actually know it's a moment of danger, because they can pretend, that they're all powerful, but they know our potential power, that we're the majority. That's why they keep passing more and more authoritarian laws to try and stop protests, stop strikes, and use the police against us. But there's another way the Tories try and deal with these problems, isn't it? Their other way out is division. Division and scapegoating. They try and set one group of workers against another. Nurses versus rail workers, teachers versus refuse workers. And try and scapegoat others in the most brutal, nasty, and racist ways, targeting refugees and migrants, making out that desperate people fleeing war, poverty, climate change, that they're somehow to blame for this crisis. Their latest plan, to take those people that have landed on a beach in the south of England, take them, put them on a one-way ticket to Rwanda, never to return. Rwanda, a country that shot dead 12 refugees when they protested against a cut to food rations. But this is the response of governments and rulers across the globe, creating a world of borders, walls, barbed wire fences, backed up with guns and force. This week, the barely reported killing of 37 migrants in the Spanish enclave of Melilla in Morocco. That's a massacre in the European Union. That's the reality of Fortress Europe. At least 51 people found suffocated to death in extreme heat in a trailer truck in Texas. But these aren't horrific exceptions. They're the logic of a world of borders. And we are very clear in the SWP, all refugees are welcome here. We're against all immigration controls. And we say open the borders and let everybody in who wants to come to this country. But the Tories' racism is not limited to targeting refugees and migrants. Their new Nationality and Borders Act threatens the citizenship rights of up to 6 million people in Britain. The racist, hostile environment stretches from the Windrush scandal to forced deportations. And institutional racism means that black children are not even safe in their own schools from the police, strip-searching black girls in a classroom. This shows the entrenched racism and sexism in the police. And we know how this racism of the mainstream, of the state, the politicians helps fuel the far right and the fascists, waiting in the wings to provide their solutions to the crisis, like Nazi Marine Le Pen in France. So we face a world of massive challenges, deep polarization, at times a frightening world. The decision by the US Supreme Court to rip up abortion rights has sent shockwaves of terror, not just across America, but across the world. It means there is no constitutional right to abortion in the US. In about 60% of states, abortion is now either banned, soon to be banned, or under serious threat. And it doesn't mean the end to abortion, it means the end to safe abortion. Unless, of course, you are rich. And women will die from botched backstreet abortions, and it's working class women and black women who will be hit the hardest. And it tells us a lot about democracy, doesn't it? The US, the so-called land of the free, where 9 unelected members of the Supreme Court can force women to give birth. And it emboldens all the bigots. Now in America, they're talking about overturning other precedents, the right to contraception, the right to same-sex marriage. So we have a massive attack on women's rights, LGBT plus rights, on all our rights. And it gives confidence to those who want to do the same here in Britain. And it means we have some big fights ahead of us to stop them rolling back the clock. But we have to remember, any gains we've made, any rights, whether it's the right to abortion, the right to express our sexuality, they were never just handed down from on high. They were won by mass movements where hundreds of thousands of people fought collectively for change. And their class issues, the trade unions were won to being at the forefront of the fight for abortion rights in Britain, and we will have to mobilise again. But you know, those at the top of society, they do all this. They scapegoat, they divide, they lie, they attack oppressed people, all to help cloak and camouflage the fact that their system does not work, to hide the fact that capitalism fails. Because all these things we're talking about, they're not separate. They're a product of a system where the rule of profit comes before everything else. This is a system that gave us the COVID pandemic, a pandemic caused by industrialized farming practices, chopping down rainforests, pushing into remote areas and fragile lands, meaning that once isolated coronaviruses are now in contact with us. A pandemic that isn't over and has led to millions of people dying needlessly across the globe because of a lack of protective equipment, because economies opened up too soon, because they had to work out of economic necessity, because they were denied the vaccine. There is enough vaccine for the entire world. It's been hoarded by richer countries. They've prevented patents and technologies from being shared. And it's a system hurtling us towards catastrophic climate change, because those at the top won't break from the carbon, fossil-fueled economic system. All their pledges at COP last year were meaningless. Britain, the US and others are ripping up their emissions targets now, using the excuse of the war in Ukraine to drive for more investment in coal, oil and gas. And it's a system that profits from our misery. Because the cost of living crisis, it isn't a natural phenomenon, it's a choice by those at the top of society. Those energy companies are making vast profits. Shell, already in the first 3 months of this year, made over £7 billion. Together with BP, they're going to grab nearly £50 billion profit this year. And it's a system that is driving us towards more war and violent confrontation. The murderous conflict in Ukraine, grinding on for months, causing massive destruction and human suffering. We're clear Russia should get out, but we need to stop NATO escalating it further. The US, Britain, other NATO countries pouring in billions of pounds and weaponry in a bid to extend their own influence and power. Boris Johnson, he doesn't care about the Ukrainians. He's one of the most leading warmongers lining up with US imperialism. And of course, it's a system of entrenched oppression which produces things like the continuing brutality of the oppression of the Palestinian people. Well, they want to prop up that system. We want to tear it down. That means we have to talk about getting rid of capitalism completely, talking about revolution, talking about socialist transformation of the world, fighting for a world where decisions are not about making profits, but about what we need. Talking about a deeper democracy where we get to make real decisions. And when we talk about revolution, we mean revolution as a mass collective act involving millions of people. I mean, this whole festival is called Marxism Festival. To be honest, if Marx was alive today, he would be raging at the system, just as we all are. And above all else, Marxism is a theory and practice of revolution. Marx said revolution is necessary because those at the top will never voluntarily give up their power. But it's also necessary because the process of struggle and revolution changes us. It shows the potential to overcome those divisions of capitalism. And when we see the strikes, like those on the rail, we do get a glimpse of that power we have. Not only do workers have the power to stop work, stop profits being made, and bring society to a standstill, but we have the power as well to build a different sort of society where everyone is valued and can play a role. But nothing is inevitable here. We have some huge tasks ahead of us. We've seen the potential for resistance, but we're going to have to fight and organise to take those struggles forward. And that does mean talking about organisation, socialist organisation. You see, the Socialist Workers' Party is an organisation that seeks to intervene in every struggle. We're part of every movement, but we also try and offer political clarity for a way forward that can win, and an understanding that while we fight for every gain now, we ultimately have to link it to that fight against capitalism. So it's different from the Labour Party, because the reality is that attempts to transform society through Parliament or trying to win small reforms have failed. It's under a Biden presidency that Roe versus Wade has been overturned. It's under a Labour-type government that the massacre of migrants in Spain took place. And the Labour Party here in Britain has gone from being a beacon to activists under Corbyn to one that now reviles them. This is not an accident. It's the reality if you work within the system rather than confront it. And there is a growing global crisis. The world has been shaken in the last decade by mass global revolts that we're beginning to see again right now, whether it's Sudan, Sri Lanka, Ecuador. The question is not whether struggle will happen or not, but what the outcome of those struggles will be. And that means we have to seize the opportunity to take them forward. And that means politics, organisation, and strategy. We need activism, but we also need socialist politics and solutions to the crisis. And that's why not only is the SWP at the forefront arguing for more strikes, our members in trade unions have led the fight for trans rights too. And we will be on the Trans Pride in London next Saturday with our union banners. We've been central to the fight to defend a woman's right to choose, whether that's abortion or the right to wear the hijab. And we'll be on the abortions right protests next Saturday as well. It's why we are part of building a mass movement against racism and the far right. We're part of Stand Up to Racism. There's some key mobilisations coming up, including on the 19th of July, a day of action to stop deportations and the flights to Rwanda. It's why we'll be on every picket line fighting for better pay, conditions and safety. But we will also be arguing that we have to get rid of capitalism that drives this race to the bottom, that's driving war and climate change. And so we have to fight for a world where people and planet are put before profit and for a world free of exploitation and oppression. But to be honest, we need to be bigger. Everybody makes a difference. And that's why, if you're not yet a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, we want you to join. It's been a brilliant weekend. I really hope everyone's enjoyed it and come out of it clearer in the arguments we've all been having. But don't leave this festival as an individual. Leave as part of a socialist organisation and help us take the struggle forward. Because as I say, we need to be bigger. We face momentous tasks. The stakes are very high. But when we act together, we know we make a difference. And that's why we're asking you to join us today, join the fight, join the Socialist Workers' Party.